Hello, my name is David Ogletree. I wanted to create a course specifically for marketers, pay-per-click marketers, and even SEOs about Excel. I'm going to start off with the basics, but we're going to quickly get into how it covers and works with Excel and marketing. So, to begin with, you open Excel. If you've never used Excel before, this is what it looks like. And Excel is a collection of rows and columns where you can manipulate data, strings of text, or you can do numbers, and we can even get even more advanced and start working with pivot tables. And there's a lot of ways to organize data. And what this does is it helps you to become a better marketer and better to understand the information that you have. So the very basic concept, we have columns up here where you have A, B, C, D, E, F, and then you have numbers 1, 2, 3, 4. And so that's how you would organize your data. So at the top, you might have like a date, like December, or even January, February, March, and then you might have 2015, 2016, and then 2017. And so what you would want to do now, you have like a little table here, and we can put stuff in here. So we got so many sales in January, and this February, and this March. And this is a good thing you would use in marketing, so you can kind of compare year over year to see how things have changed. So we might put 1,000 here, 1,100 here, and then 1,200 here. And things are getting better each year. Hopefully, sometimes it gets worse, but for this example, that's what we're going to do. February is a shorter month, so we might just put 900, 1,000, and then 1,100. And then March is a little bit longer month again, and we'll say that things have gotten better, so we'll do 1,050, 1,150, and then 1,250. And so now we have just a basic table. So now we can do certain things with this. And the next concept I want to introduce is formulas. So at the very basic formula, you can actually add these numbers up. One thing I'd like to do, and there's a built-in ability here, you just go ahead and select the bottom down here, and you do auto sum, and then you hit enter, and it automatically does that. And you see what it does, and you can actually hand type this in. You have equals sum, and then you put the numbers in here. And so that will add up those two numbers. And so we can actually go ahead and type the same thing here, equals sum, and then left parentheses, and then C2 colon C4. And so you can see it turns in blue, and I hit enter, and it does exactly the same thing. Another option is to grab a hold of, so you see how it goes from a white background plus symbol to a black background. Once you do that, you click on it, and then you just drag it over, and it automatically creates that. You'll see that the numbers changed from C2 to C4 to D2 to D4. Excel is pretty smart. Most of the time it will get that correct. Sometimes it doesn't. You have to be careful and make sure you double check to make sure it did work. Now, some of the things you can do to manipulate this would be to, I can select them, I can delete it. And so one thing you might want to be careful about is so let's say I have a, some percentage up here, let's say 5%, and I want to use that number for all of these. So I would do an equal sign. I do my sum again, B2 colon B4. See, the colon tells you, so everything in between those two things, everything between B2 and B4, and then right parentheses. So now I have the same thing I had before. Now I can, so that represents a single number right there. That represents the total. So now I can do stuff to that. I can do times, and then I can do F2. And so now that it will multiply it times that. So it comes to 165. Now, one thing you'll notice that when I put 5% over here, it seems to know that that's 5%. It actually figured that out. You can also find that out by going here, Format, and you change it to percentage. It automatically did that for me, but it doesn't always do that. So you always got to double check to make sure that that's correct. Excel is pretty smart, but it's not always. Sometimes it does some really odd things. So one of the problems we have now is this: when I move this over, it will set it to 0 because it changed that to G2. So the way we make sure it doesn't do that, whenever you put a $ in front of something, Excel knows to never move that. So whenever I copy this over now, it will always copy over. It says G2. It'll always say F2. I'm sorry, not G2. It'll always say F2. And but notice that the C2, C4, D2, and D4 actually have moved. So that way you make sure that it doesn't move it over. Now another thing you could do is you want to have it move over different ways. I can say some number 2 and some percentage 3. And so I want to put 6%, 7%. This is kind of an odd example, but it proves my point. So what I want to do is I want it to move down. And so what I would do is I want to make sure that it always stays on the second row. So I don't have to, I leave the $ there and take off the $ there. And now when I move it over, it will actually move each one. See, that one goes there, and then that one goes there. And that helps you to move those around. Now, another thing we might want to do is to play around with these numbers. You can actually also do B2 plus B3 plus B4, and it will just automatically put them together. That's the same thing as the sum before. Now, if I did the times 5% here, it'll come up to 2160. So what you need to do is make sure you put the parentheses around here so that they represent one number, because what it's doing is it's doing B2 plus B3. It's just doing it incorrectly. It's following the rules of math. So if you know anything about math, you know there's a set of rules that it has to follow. So to be for sure, you always have to put parentheses around something that you want to make sure that they represent a single number, so that and that's one of the nice things about using the sum, is that it will actually keep that together. You don't have to worry about it, because it represents a single number just like that, and that makes that a lot safer. Now the next thing I want to show you is that we can actually start manipulating text. So I can type in the quick brown fox. So now I want to combine these things. So what I do is I type in the equal sign. I'll do B6, C6, and D6, and E6. And the quick brown fox, it combines them all together. So now that I can actually combine these things together, if I copy these things, and that's another thing before I talked about dragging things, and what it'll do, it'll just move it, it'll just copy it over and over and over again. You can do that even without formulas. And so I can just copy these things down, and as we talked about before, it copies the formula down and changes, see, it changes to 8, 9, and 7. So that way I have all those numbers. So that's how I work with strings. Now you can get really fancy with strings. Now you want to find out how long something is. You can actually come over here, and I will do equal, and I will type in LEN for length, and then I will do F6, and it tells me that that is 19 characters. And this can be very useful when you're working with keywords. You want to find out, how long characters are, that kind of thing. We can change this so each one's a little bit different. We can take off the E9 here, take off the last 2 here, and then take off the last 3 here. And you'll notice now that I have the different sizes. I have the long one, the quick, and the quick brown. So now I can actually go and come up with a average percentage. So I can either do, like we talked about before, doing just average with the same numbers, just like sum, and it will tell me the average was 12.25. Or we can do it the old way, where we add them up, H6 plus H7 plus H8 plus H9 in the parentheses, remember, and then divided by 4. Gives me the same answer. So that's doing exactly the same thing. This is exactly the same thing. And so that lets me see, the numbers in there. And that's really helpful. You want to see what the average number is and that kind of thing as well. Now, another thing we can do is we can actually go around and search through these things. So one of the things I might do is create another formula here, and I want to search for if the word quick is involved in there. So I would do search, and so it actually will help you to type up your your formula in here, and it'll tell you where you are. See how it's bolded on find text? So that's where I'm going to find text, and then within text. So I want to find, and make sure you always put quotation marks around text. I want to find brown, and then I hit my comma. Now I'm going to search within text, and that will be F6. And the next one would be start number. So if you wanted to start later on, that's more advanced. We won't really cover that. And so I'll put my parentheses in, put my answer. The answer is 11. Now, if I were to actually type in a lowercase b, it still finds it. So it's not case sensitive. There's another one called find that does the same thing, that is case sensitive. So now if I type in 2, it gives me a value. So if I don't like seeing that, so normally what I will have to do is to find out a true or false. So what I would do would be to copy this, or cut it actually, Control X, and then I type in is number, and then paste that back in there and put my parentheses. Now it tells me false. So it's not finding 2 because it's not in there. So I type in Fox, and now it says true. So if I do an undo, Control Z, false, and then change it back to Fox, I now have true. And so this can be very useful. So let's say you want to actually find if something is, 2 different things are in there. There's a thing called and or. And so what those operators do is that allows you to search for this word or that word and tell me if it's true or false. Or you can do this word or that word, and they both have to be in there. So let's start off. So I'm going to select the whole thing. This is, a lot of times I do this. It helps me to remember where I am. So I'll select the whole thing because I know that works. So what I'll start off with, we're going to do an or. So we're going to say or, and then we do the parentheses. And so this is what it's supposed to look like, the or, and then you put whatever's in there. And you can put as many as you want in there. You can actually put 10 or 20 in there. It can meet any one of those things. This can be very helpful for if you're trying to find certain things. And I used this the other day where I had a bunch of information from Magento and a bunch of products. I was trying to specifically find flags. Unfortunately, the word flag is in a lot of things. So there might be a mug with flag on it. There might be a bandana with flag on it. But I can't actually search for flag because it brings up too many false positives. So the big thing I wanted to do was have a bunch of ors in there to find out. I needed to make sure that if it had the word mug in it, if it had the word shirt in it, if it had the word bandana in it. So I had to make sure that I could find all the things that that were in my list, so that I could actually break down and just find flags. So I'm going to paste this in here, the is number Fox. So right now I have only one thing in my or, so I have to add a second one. So I add a comma, and then I paste it again, and then I'll just go and change it to brown. So it will tell me it's true. So now if I change that to 2 like we told you before, remember how 2 didn't work. So I type in 2, and it still works. But before it would have said false, but now because it's one or the other. Now another thing I can do is change my or to an and. now it says it's false because both of the things in there have to be true. And so that's how you can actually go and find that information in there. And you can actually use this information. There's another thing called an if statement. So if you actually want to have it say something, right now the only thing I can do is say true or false. So I can take all of this and cut it again and then just create an if statement. And so I start off with my logical test. If my or statement is true, is equal to true, so that's my logical test. I put my comment in there, the value of true. I can put it worked, and then if it didn't, I can just put nothing. So sometimes you want to just show nothing. So right now it shows nothing. So if I change it back to or, like we talked about before, now it says it worked. See, now it says it worked. It says nothing. So if you want to actually have your if statement show text or not show text as opposed to true or false, that's how you would do that. Now the reason that I had to use is number is because if I just do if search, it will actually it'll actually show my text. It'll say it worked when it is true, but when it's false, it'll show no value. So that's one of the things I really don't like about doing an if search. I wish that it worked properly, but you have to do an extra step to make sure that you don't show in there like that. So that can be very annoying. So just make sure that you're, to understand how the error thing works, you've got to catch these errors and do something with them. And that's what we're doing here. We're returning true or false as opposed to an error. So search will only return a number that's greater than 0. Well, it'll return 0 up to whatever, but is number, because when it's false, it returns something else that's not a number. So that's why I can just say is number.